Welcome to episode 2 of the Red River Rivalry podcast. I am your Oklahoma co-host, Sean Swanda. To my left is the Texas Longhorn co-host and UT graduate, Cristian Perez. Today's theme is format changes in our favorite sports.
So first off, we have to talk about college football, the playoffs, proposed expansion. When would this even start?
Well, the governor, the ball's been rolling pretty hard on this, but all of the parties involved that have to get together to approve it still have to get together, and they haven't decided when they decide if they ratify it, they'll decide when it goes into effect too. So it sounds like best case scenario the change would go into effect for 2023. So we're probably looking at next year being a 4-team playoff like we're used to, and then after that it would actually be in effect, I believe, from everything that's come out professionally.
Okay, so what changes are expected?
Okay, so essentially they're jumping all the way from 4 teams to 12 teams, and what they're doing to appease the Central Floridas, the Boise States, what TCU used to be before they joined our conference. They're going to guarantee the 6 best conference champions a spot in the playoff, and have 6 at-large spots that it doesn't matter about conference affiliation. So that's like the concession to the SEC, and the SEC thinking they're going to get like 4 or 5 teams into this thing, but. At first I was kind of annoyed because I'm very, very against automatic bids, especially in a sport like this. But
let's talk a little bit about those automatic bids, because it is annoying, but exactly, is there some type of like objective standard that makes you a top 6?
Well, I think it essentially means the 6 conference champions with the highest ranking otherwise /best record. So
because you could be the top, you could be like number 1 in the league, but you could have like the rest of your conference just be complete dog.
Well, plus with the conference championship game effect, that's part of the problem. Like if a really crazy upset happens, I don't want a 5 or 6 loss team being in this thing. That's my only gripe. But then again, you step back and you're like, how often is the 6th worst conference champion not going to be one of the 12 best teams in the country? So it is a very good compromise for all parties involved, I think.
Well then, what happens with Notre Dame? Are they going to automatically get a bid every year if they have a winning record?
That's the funny thing, because what I didn't say yet is that the top 4 seeds, you have to be a conference champion to get one of the top 4 seeds. So this is going to gradually force Notre Dame to join a conference, and it's like I really want Notre Dame to be in the Big Ten, the Midwest's most iconic team and the Midwest's most iconic conference. But just from how things went last year and from their relationships with the ACC and their history with, I can't remember if they were trying to get into the Big Ten or if the Big Ten was trying to get them, but they've danced this dance before in the 90s and it fell apart. So they're much more likely to join the ACC, especially since it's the easier conference to win, except for the fact that, the Clemson dynasty is in the way. So once this is ratified, it's how long is Jack Swarbrick going to be able to hold back and be like, we kind of have to join a conference just so we can actually try to get one of those top 4 seeds. That, or it's, hubris and thinking, it doesn't matter that we have to play the first round. We're just going to be the 5 seed and beat everybody anyway.
Yeah. Money's going to be a big factor in this now, especially since college students can get paid by different types of...
name, image, likeness is a big game changer. Nick Saban was saying just today or the other day that his quarterback that hasn't played a down yet is already over 7 figures in name, image, likeness. So this has become a professional sport overnight, essentially.
Yeah, professional, and the fact that you can become your own entity. Like, you don't have to rely on the school to give you everything now, because you can go out and make a contract with the local pizza shop to put your face on the pizza box.
Yeah, and I haven't, obviously not being in Norman or the area, I can't follow OUs very close, but the Locked On Sooners podcast guy was talking about how, I mean, this is going to be insane even for backups, because, like, okay, Spencer Rattler is our guy, right? He's our Heisman candidate. He's hopefully going to lead us to the promised land, right? But Caleb Williams has been so hyped up. I think they're probably going to redshirt him because they aren't really expecting him to play, or they could just be willing, okay, he'll play mop-up duty, right? But he's so hyped up, he might be getting name, image, and likeness already just for, hey, everybody knows this guy's the next. Yes. And then we've already got a commitment, the number 2 quarterback in the class of 2023. I mean,
so going back to our main point about the playoffs was, do you think the money is going to have something to do with it now that you can pay a player? Do you think that those players are going to be incentivized like they've always been, but now more to an even bigger extent to go to those top schools that make the most money?
Well, that's going to be the big storyline of the next decade, because it's going to be like, in some ways, you would think it would help the Nebraskas of the world rebuild. It would help the Louisiana Lafayettes, the Boise States, and the UCFs of the world build up into being contenders. But at the same time, the kids that are going to go to Alabama are going to go to Alabama, man. The kids that are going to go to Clemson are going to go to Clemson. The kids that are going to go to Oklahoma are going to go to Oklahoma. I mean, it's kind of a new wrinkle on the same old story. I mean, but even so, though, I mean,
so just as long as those top schools keep being the top schools and stay in those top conferences, those conferences are going to still be on top.
Yeah, I mean, but in interesting ways, though, in the 21st century, we have seen shifts in recruiting, in that it has been easier for hipster programs to get better recruits, though. So, I mean, that phenomenon has already been a little bit there, but also I think the depth of the talent pool has also grown over time, because high school football has gotten better over time, too. So the trouble is that the catch-22 on that is that with the safety concerns growing, is that the number of kids playing high school football is going down, though. So that's kind of peaked, though, in a way. So it'll be interesting to see how all that unfolds over the next 25 years.
So who do you think are going to be the top 6 ranked conferences that are going to get an automatic bid every year?
Okay, so obviously SEC, ACC, basically pencil in Alabama and Clemson until somebody beats them.
You really ACC?
Okay, the conference itself, no, but Clemson is a juggernaut, okay?
Right now.
Well, okay. In my vocal series that I did with OU to the SEC, in the second season, I put Clemson in the SEC East in South Carolina's place just to force them to freaking play somebody. So, I mean, they basically have a bye into the playoff because they're playing in arguably the second worst Power 5 conference.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what happens to these conferences that have one really good program and the rest of the conference is dog?
Like ours, Boomer Sooner.
What are you talking about?
Iowa State is our only legitimate competition right now.
I don't know, man. Big 12 is a big market.
Okay,
a lot of people are going to keep going to Big 12.
All right. Well, it will also make it interesting how this will change conference expansion, conference destruction, conference realignment in the next decade too, because it'll make it more attractive for, say, the Big 12 to say, screw geography, here we'll...
Well, we already said that with West Virginia.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I prefer geographic ties, but I mean, I'll admit, if we actually got Boise State to join, it would be a coup.
Have you ever driven to go, like, see a game?
So far in my life, the only games I've been to have all been home. I've been to Baylor in 2001, UCLA in 2003, which is an interesting story. I had a sign that day as a little kid that said UCLA, University of Chronically Losing Athletics. And I was holding it up all game, and the people in the upper deck behind us aren't used to that kind of crap being in the upper deck, so they were griping at me, and I basically gave it up. But the camera guys had seen it, so on Antonio Perkins' final touchdown, I didn't actually put it up. But we found in the telecast later, it's them trying to find that sign, and I turned my head right as they put the camera on us. It's like, crap! But anyways, and then the third game was Cincinnati in 2007. So out of the three, UCLA in 03 is probably the best game I've been to. And I also lucked into spring game tickets in 2009, I believe, because we were there for the state speech and debate tournament, and I got DQ'd early because I went too long on my original oratory time. So I had the afternoon free when I wasn't supposed to, and I found a ticket in the student lounge that somebody had lost. So, I was giddy. I finally, okay, you have to do the right thing and try to find the owner. I did that for about 5 minutes, and then I'm like, well, I'm just going to go. So that was really fun. But, okay, back to the point. We were talking about who are going to be the top 6 conference champions. Well, the interesting thing is that since it's not guaranteed, there could be a scenario where if the Pac-12 doesn't improve, they could fall out of it. Like say the big 4, SEC, Big 12, ACC, who am I forgetting? Big 10, all have a representative locked up. And say UCF and Boise State both go undefeated in the same year, and the Pac-12 champion has 2 or 3 losses. The Pac-12 wouldn't even be guaranteed if the rankings are high enough with Boise State and UCF for them to snatch those spots. So this could be Armageddon Day for the Pac-12 if they don't get somebody to get their crap together. But in the change, I think an Oregon or a Washington's going to get a team good enough to be only 1 or 2 loss and get in there. But
yeah, you're right. The at-large spaces are still there. That's half the field right there.
Yeah, and it's like I said, how often is the 6th worst conference champion not going to be a top 12 team in the country? So it is a very good compromise. We should always have the 12 best teams in the country. It'd be insane. It'd be special. And the most special part is that the first round, you're 5 versus 12. You're
going to have a lot of games that actually matter now instead of having all the bowl games where it's like, it's fun.
Yeah, like my gripe with college football has always been that if you lose more than 1 game, especially for a program of our standard, the season feels like it's over. So it's like,
well, you're gonna have games that actually matter. You're gonna have, like you said, games where it's not gonna be the season's over. It's gonna be, look, hey, senior that's gonna go on to the NFL draft in a couple weeks or a couple months. You're gonna have like a chance to actually play for something instead of like not really giving a
it will help stop kids from skipping bowl games. I mean, the ones that only make regular bowl games still will, but I mean, it's going to bring a lot of that prestige back. Now, the insane part is that the 5 through 12, all those first round games are going to be at the higher seeds campus site, and then the quarterfinals, semifinals, and final are all going to be worked into. The quarterfinals and semifinals are still going to basically be what the 4-team playoff was and rotate between the New Year's 6 bowl games.
Does this mean less regular season games?
That is the part nobody's figured out yet, because
you want your school to make the money on home ticket sales.
Yeah. So just from the money perspective, it's hard to picture them cutting games, but on the safety perspective, they're going to be like, how many games are we going to expect student athletes, student in air quotes, to play?
Are we going to have a 2-tier system where we have, instead of bowl games, we have a consolation prize kind of tournament?
Well, the FCS, the Group of 5 kind of should have already been doing that just to showcase their teams, but it's going to be interesting to see if they decide to do that with the smaller bowl games, just so they'll stop kids skipping the smaller bowl games. But, I mean, and that would basically be an NIT/Europa League for college football. That would be insane, too, if you had teams 13 through 24 playing a consolation tournament. That would be insane too, and then the entire top 25 would it would matter. It'd be like, if you're in the top 24, you're playing for something.
That's a really good Twitter poll question. How about we put that up on the Twitter? By the way, guys, we have a Twitter. Do you remember our handle?
I believe it is at Rivalry Red, spelled correctly. I think that's what Twitter picked for us because it didn't want Red River Rivalry, the podcast. It didn't want such a long handle, so that's what it auto-corrected to, and I didn't notice. But
well, there you go. Go to Rivalry Red.
Yeah, at Rivalry Red.
All right, at Rivalry Red. You can find us on Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook.
And the YouTube version of the show is on our YouTube account. So,
okay,
relentless like, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe so we could eventually get monetized.
Yeah, please do that. Okay, so now that we've got the college football sorted out, why don't we kind of go to our next subject, NFL football?
Well, I was trying to remember if there was one more thing I wanted to say about it, but, we can always circle back to it in the future. We can move on to the NFL.
Okay, so 14-team playoff. How do you feel about that?
Well, at first, I was very annoyed because the Packers, my team, are always usually fighting for one of those bye seeds. So I was like, if the 2 seed's not going to get a bye anymore, that kind of makes things way too easy for the 1 seed. But
are they really going to be fighting for the bye this year, though?
Oh, don't sidetrack me into that right now.
Do you really think that?
Well,
okay, but yeah, for teams that are fighting for that second place bye seed, it's no longer going to be possible.
No, the 2 seed will play the 7 seed from now until they change it again. And last year, both 7 seeds lost, but it did make the playoff race more interesting, especially for me as a Sooner fan, because the Cardinals were kind of earmarked for that 7 seed for the longest time, and then they kind of choked out of it. So for the longest time, I was like, oh, crap. Kyler's going to make the playoffs, just have to come to Lambeau, and we're going to have to beat him. And while I'll get to see him play against my team, he's going to we're going to get upset by one of my boys, or he's going to be a one and done in the playoffs, and then they didn't even make it. But so that was going through my head all December long. And that, I mean, in some ways, that does make the stretch run of the NFL regular season more interesting. It's like, I don't know. So I've already kind of come to acceptance on this. I can see why they did it. It was pretty fun last year. Wild card weekend last year was pretty insane. And I mean, the first time one of these 7 seeds wins and has to play the 1 seed the next week in the divisional round is going to be epic. But so far they're 0 for 2, but we've only had the system 1 year. So, and then, and when you think about it, when people have debated this, going through the teams that finished 7th in the past, they're usually decent teams. I mean, it's not often your 7 seeds going to be 8 and 8. So what's always been the problem with the playoffs is when a terrible team wins a division and gets the division's automatic bye, just like we were saying about conference champions in the college playoffs. So it's like last year, I almost said that R word, but last year when the football team from Washington, D.C. made one year terrible NFC East, that was a team that technically didn't deserve to be in the playoffs because the 8th best team in the conference had a better record. So should we still be guaranteeing division winners a seat at the table? Should division winners still be getting an automatic home game?
I think so. There's a reason why you play your division teams like twice a year.
In which, I could easily break down how they come up with the schedule, but it'd bore everybody here that doesn't like that kind of thing. One of my friends, when I was telling them how they came up with the 17th opponent for the 17th game, essentially told me as much 2 or 3 months ago. So yeah, from the politics and the money-making standpoint of the league, guaranteeing that spot is true, but it makes the division rivalry something. You create that division rivalry, and it's for the fans. Yeah, and so you want it to mean something. And the most memorable example I can think of is 2010, our freshman year of college, when my 2010 Packers went on to win the Super Bowl. But on the lesser extent of that, it was Sam Bradford's rookie year with the St. Louis Rams, or the then St. Louis Rams, and they really should have got that spot with a 7-9 record, but they kind of choked in Week 17 against against Seattle. So that was the Beastquake year, the year the Seahawks hosted the Saints, and they upset the Saints, and got to be a sacrificial lamb the next week when they shouldn't have been in the playoffs anyway. So one of these pathetic teams has actually won a playoff game before, but they only won because they were at home and they had that crazy advantage. But so it's like, I guess that's just the Saints' punishment for being a wild card, right?
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I guess all things Saints kind of have me biased, too, because my wife's from Louisiana, so my in-laws are all LSU Saints. So, but let's see. I think that's wrapped up football in a nice bow. I think we're ready to move on to soccer, unless you got a closing thought, Christian.
Nope, don't have any closing thoughts about NFL. Honestly, I thought the way they've been running it has been perfectly fine. Yeah, I'd actually like to see less regular season games because football is is grueling, and I hate to see injuries at the end of the year, especially to star players, making the
Yeah,
playoff games kind of dull if you miss out on that.
The trade-off is that they shaved off a preseason game. I think the preseason is eventually going to disappear entirely, and it'll just be training camp and joint practices. So that'll be interesting when they do that, because that'll make the NFL like college, and every game matters, and you don't see your team actually play until it actually matters. So that would be kind of bonkers, but at the same time, the owners will probably keep the glorified practices that are the preseason games for the money angle. But then again, teams can monetize training camp to make up the difference. I mean, like the people going to watch Green Bay practice in training camp in Green Bay is insane. Like, I mean, if you charge people $5 a head to go see that, I don't know if they currently do or not, but that would add up over time to make up for the preseason games. Like, I mean, your California Cowboy fans that watch the Cowboys training camp in Oxford every year, that I mean, it's monetizable for every team.
So, 48 teams in the World Cup. Is this just some kind of plot to get USA into the World Cup?
We didn't have anything to do with that. We just choked last World Cup qualifying cycle. That's all there is to it. It was our own fault for screwing up in the early part of the qualifying cycle. But this is a FIFA money grab. Them looking at how can we make our golden goose even more of a golden goose? And
how do you feel about it? I think that's cool.
Well, there's pros and cons to it, because, I mean, yes, it is a good thing. Yes, it helped us get the 2026 World Cup, because we're the only ready-made country to host the thing, with the expansion of just how much more you need.
You need a lot more cities to be able to host games.
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers.
Put one in each state.
Like every World Cup that's not in the U.S. from now on will probably have to be a co-hosting thing. Ironically, after FIFA said under the old format that they were getting sick of co-hosting, but so it's like the bids for 2030 are already starting to come together, and it's like the 2030 bid, the main one that's probably going to win, the one that's kind of almost earmarked already, is the Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Paraguay bid, because Uruguay hosted the very first World Cup in 1930, and it'd be the 100th anniversary of the first World Cup and celebrating that. So I really want the South American bid to win there, and have Uruguay have their time in the sun with the anniversary, and then 100 years from now that generation can decide whether they want to do it again or not. Because I mean, if Uruguay's guaranteed a World Cup every 100 years, maybe that's not a good thing, but for right now I kind of like it. The trouble is with how bad a clown show the Copa America was. Argentina and some of those countries look pretty bad on how COVID was handled, and how the current Copa America we just got through this summer with the epic Brazil-Argentina final nearly didn't get played. So, like, I was legit griping. They're going to have to move it here. A Copa America the USA isn't even playing, and but then CONMEBOL didn't do that. They put it in Brazil. But trying to circle back to our where we're going, my first thought with the 48-team World Cup is I was assuming they were going to do 12 groups of 4, and that we'd have to go back to freaking third-place team calculus in a round of 32, just like how with the 24-team World Cup when we were growing up, USA 94 kiddies was actually a 24-team World Cup, and back in those days from Spain 82 through USA 94, that's what it was. And third place teams, the 4 best third place teams made the knockout round, which consequently that's how we managed to make the round of 16 in 94. We were the third place team, and we earned the right to get clobbered by Brazil in the round of 16. But hey, I mean, that was our coming out party for growing at the time. I mean, just making the knockout round was a major accomplishment for the 94 team. So anyways, I was griping about third place calculus and how bogus it feels. And I was also really annoyed still at Portugal having won Euro 2016 from third place and having gotten the easier side of the European bracket because they finished third place. But no, that's not what FIFA's doing. What FIFA's going to do, which feels really weird, is 16 groups of 3. Now, the first problem with that, everybody's only guaranteed 2 games. So all of these, the Panamas and the Togos and the Bolivias and the North Korea is actually legitimately qualified for a 32-team World Cup, but the teams that are going to get in that people feel like don't belong are only going to have 2 games to enjoy, and It's round robin, which is the other problem is that.
Or they're going to have 2 games to dominate.
Well, that's true. If you have an Iceland story, they win the first game, then the pressure is insane on the team they're playing in the second game. Yes, that's a good storyline. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see that. And, shoot. But anyways, the big scandal in the 70s in the World Cup that got FIFA to change to where the classic group stage changed to where the final games had to be played simultaneously was a scandal where West Germany, I forgot to look this up ahead of time to know the details for sure, but I think it's Austria they were playing. And,
yeah, it was Austria.
And
you wrote it down.
Well, I didn't actually do the research. I was going by memory. But and anyways, West Germany was playing one of their nearby neighbors. I'm pretty sure it's Austria. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was an Arabic country. I think it was Iran or Saudi Arabia. So, but somebody, the team that got hosed had already played. Might have been Turkey, which would technically be European, but that part of the world and that type of culture. But anyway, somebody got hosed in third place because West Germany and Austria knew what they had to do in order for them to both go through. And I mean, Austria apparently didn't fancy playing West Germany head on, so they played a farcical game where all 11 players just stood around the whole game, barely passing the ball around like happy little 4-year-olds, just like, oh, here, it's your turn to have the ball. Oh, here, it's your turn to have the ball. So that was a big scandal that, so that's why FIFA had to change it to where you couldn't rig that in a partnership anymore. That it had to be simultaneous games. And I love the simultaneous games, but FIFA's counterpoint is that, okay, if there's only a champion going through, there's only one team going through, that should negate that some, but it's still kind of begging for scandals, man. I don't like it.
Yeah, money talks.
Yeah, but in some ways, it's a double swing where yes, we're going to have more teams, but 16 teams are still only going through. So that group stage is going to be cutthroat. I mean, and
hopefully it is. I mean, that makes a great soccer.
Yeah, and the 2020 World Cup in Qatar, the 2020 World Cup in Tatooine, I should say. That's the nice way of saying how bad Qatar is, but let's not get into that right now. The 2020 World Cup is still a classic 32-team World Cup. We get to say goodbye to the 32-team World Cup next winter, which I don't love that, but it's kind of funny how God essentially sanctioned it by us needing the extra time because of COVID anyway. So anyways, we get to say goodbye to the 32-team World Cup, and then the 48-team World Cup goes into effect in 2026, the one we're co-hosting in air quotes with Mexico and Canada. Mexico and Canada are only getting 10 games out of the whatever each. So basically, Canada's group will play in Canada, Mexico's group will play in Mexico, and I think that's basically it as far as the not being in America part of the tournament. So that's why Mexico was so mad. Like, why are we even technically doing this when we're only getting 10 games? And I'm like, well, suck it up. You're lucky you're getting to host again when you've already had 2 World Cups. But then again, Mexico's second World Cup was a technicality because they had to step in for Colombia in whichever World Cup that was because Colombia had to withdraw at the last minute. So
really can't wait for that, especially going to games in Canada and Mexico. Would like to go to at least one game.
And in legacy, my parents went to the Switzerland game in '94 in Detroit. So I'm already planning to save up to try to be like, hey, I'm going to go watch the USA's first game, enjoy that, and then come home and enjoy the rest of the tournament on my couch, because, I mean, that's probably all finances will allow. But,
yeah, back in college, I'd be like, let's just go to the game and not worry about where we're going to be staying and how we're going to get into the game and just go with some cash and gas money and
with the
get there, and then by the time the game finishes, like, all right, I guess it's time to go home. But now it's like different because you got a family and you got adult responsibilities.
Well, with my wife and hopefully kids at that point, and my niece and nephew, that's not really an option. We got to have the logistics taken care of. So I don't think Michigan's going to be in the running for being one of the host cities this time. So that's kind of sad because my family actually kind of has a friend family in Michigan my parents got to stay with last time. That it's kind of an old an old friendship between my grandpa and some of those people. That's kind of fun. I met some of their grandkids one time when they came down to see my grandpa in Carnegie. So.
All right, so from one corrupt organization to another, what do you think about the Euro expansion?
Well, I kind of touched on that earlier when I was griping on Portugal. It's just mostly me griping about third place calculus. The 2014 European Championships and both 2016 and the one that just finished have both been really, really amazing. I mean, oh man, I was so starved for a summer soccer tournament, man. Euro 2020 was awesome. And the only thing I'm annoyed with is the final. I mean, the hooligans that broke into Wembley for free to watch England lose to Italy have kind of probably ruined any chance we had of the British Isles hosting 2034, which I'm really annoyed with because I'm like, oh, come on, man. I have to see the U.S. play at Old Trafford in a World Cup in my lifetime. I'm just like, really? You're going to ruin it for everybody? I should have gone and watched the women play in the 2012 Olympics. That was my only shot. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah. I think my mom went to that. She went to the World Cup in 2012. The one in France? You're talking about the Olympics.
The Olympics in London in 2012, Old Trafford was one of the host cities for that on the football at the Olympic side. So,
sorry you missed that, man.
Yeah, well, at the time I was floundering. I just found out college wasn't for me, and I was still finding my direction in life, and I didn't really have my organization for that. And at the time, I was like, didn't really think of that as a rare opportunity. I was just like, well, the first time I go to Old Trafford would be when I go for my European vacation to see United and hopefully revisit Germany where I was when my dad was in the military. So, I mean, I hadn't really put two and two together on, hey, go to Old Trafford for the international stuff and watch the girls. Make it a month-long deal, see Germany, and then come back to watch the first Premier League game of United season in August. But, obviously I wasn't, organized enough for that at the time, unfortunately.
Well, the last topic we have to talk about is baseball. Baseball is changing their playoff from 10 to 14.
Well, which we should backpedal and explain real quick that why soccer and baseball are so important to us is that soccer is my favorite sport overall. Bizarrely, because of, like I said, my dad served in the military, I actually came to soccer before I came to football because we were in Germany. So it's like, I'm backwards, man. I'm almost European in the sense that I came to soccer first. So, you've told me over time that baseball is your favorite sport. So, if you want to wax philosophical on why that is, that'd be a good intro here.
Well, I always felt like I should have played baseball growing up. My mom put me into soccer, and I spent about 18 years playing soccer when really all I wanted to do was play baseball. Baseball is just one of those sports that I kind of get. It just comes naturally.
And you said, ironically, part of it was baseball's cost, when the big problem with soccer in this country is the pay-to-play model of youth soccer. So,
well, no, soccer is a little bit more affordable than baseball. You have to travel. You have to get into like a select club. Still, like compared to baseball, soccer is actually a lot more affordable.
Which is one of those things. I was in a donut hole in the Oklahoma Panhandle. We were lucky we had high school soccer. When I was growing up, we didn't even have anything for junior high kids at all. It just cut off after grade school, and then you had to wait for high school to actually have organized soccer again. So I'm glad they've changed it to where they have amateur soccer in junior high now, and in Guyman, they've built a pretty sweet soccer complex for the youth on the east side of town. So that's going to be gradually improving over the years. But we should circle back to the topic here with the baseball playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Expanded playoffs is kind of weird in baseball. You have 162 games throughout the season. This is the end of the season. It kind of the whole mentality of playoffs in baseball has been you had this whole summer to prove that you were the best to get into the playoffs, and only the best can make it into the playoffs. And now they have this like one win kind of like win and you're in kind of thing
between the two wild cards in the current 10-team format.
And it's kind of weird. Back in the early day of baseball, you you'd have I think 4 teams make the playoffs.
Yeah, when you only had 4 division winners.
And it's just...
Which that reminds me, during the Big Red Machine days, Sparky Anderson actually got fired for finishing 3rd in the NL West one year. And I mean, that's what the standard was. And similar to Aaron Rodgers only having 1 Super Bowl win and Brett Favre only having 1 Super Bowl win, it's one of those great mysteries, great what the hell? Why does the Big Red Machine only have 1 World Series title? But
yeah,
unless I'm extremely flubbing that, and we have 2, but I'm pretty sure we only beat the Red Sox.
I have no idea what the history is on.
Come on, man! You're the baseball fan here.
I have no idea what the history is on the Reds. I know the Rangers have never won a World Series, so
yeah. Well, now
I don't really count those.
Yeah.
World Series are nice and all.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things too when they switched the Astros to the American League. I was really annoyed that they didn't just send the Brewers home to the American League since C-League had switched them over, because the Packer fan part of me that's kind of has the Wisconsin teams as sort of, they're kind of my... Yeah, I feel for the fan base even, so it's I'm annoyed that I still have the Brewers in my division.
The Brewers still makes more sense to move them, to keep them in the East, because you have...
You mean the Central?
Well, the East. I mean, not the East, but I mean the National League.
Yeah, the National League Central.
It makes sense to keep them there because you have the Cubs. You have
well, my counter argument is that if they'd been moved to the American League Central and the Royals have been kicked out west, then they'd have all of their football rivals in the division. You'd have the other Chicago team and the Chicago White Sox. You'd have the Minnesota Twins, and you'd have the Detroit Tigers. Whereas right now, in comparison's sake, they only have the Chicago Cubs as their natural, Great Lakes rival. So that's always struck me weird about the Milwaukee Brewers. And it's I should explain why I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan. My dad is from Caddo County, Oklahoma. So he is from the same county that Johnny Bench grew up. Shout out to Binger, Oklahoma. And it was weird. We were watching part of the Reds game yesterday while we were getting ready for the pilot. And they actually had Johnny Bench on during the 4th inning. And I'm like, how is this the first baseball game I'm paying attention to in years? And my boy Johnny Bench is on the Reds official telecast. So I'm like, wow. But at the same time, it wasn't set in stone because my dad wasn't big about it. So it was a great special coincidence that was right after the Ken Griffey Jr. trade that I was first paying attention, and that's how I got on the Reds is the Ken Griffey Jr. trade. And I mean, believe me, those early 2000s where Griffey was always hurt was really frustrating. And it's I'm glad Jr. was an honest man and didn't use steroids, but I mean, come on, the parallel universe where he did the Barry Bonds thing and hit 1,300 home runs. I mean, you got to admit that would have been fun to see.
Yeah. My point again, it's I'd rather see a smaller pool, keep the playoffs fast and interesting. If anything, I'd rather all the series go to 7 instead of having more teams.
Yeah, and we were talking about that off air. I was glad the NBA finally changed that in the mid 90s, early 2000s when they changed the first round to 7 games for the symmetry.
Oh, now you have. But the thing is with the NBA, now you have the playoffs lasting just as long as the regular season, it feels like.
Yeah, that's part of basketball's problem for casuals like me. It's I don't give a crap until the playoffs. The last regular season basketball game I watched was Russell Westbrook's homecoming to Oklahoma City. So, I mean, that's the...
Yeah.
But I still think that's already baseball's problem anyways, and making the playoffs better is important because they need to get those fans that only tune into the playoffs to only tune into the playoffs. Because, I mean, I think a lot of us, me counting myself amongst those numbers in a lot of ways, have been tuning out in recent years. And, I mean, people gripe... go ahead.
Baseball's a lot different sport than the rest of, I guess... kind of the same as basketball, but a lot more different than football in that baseball is now a worldwide sport.
Well, thankfully all of them are, because I mean, basketball's been worldwide for 2 or 3 decades now. Football slowly becoming worldwide. I mean,
the second biggest market for basketball is going to be China. But then, you have smaller markets throughout Europe and Africa. But baseball, you have it everywhere.
Well,
I guess except for the cricket countries, but...
Yeah, and the baseball has been smart about that, too, trying to copy everybody going to London. And I was surprised the Red Sox and Yankees gave up 2 games to do that London series when they did it. And which that's another thing that bugs me out of baseball. You play 162 games. Divisional teams play each other 19 times. An odd number, really. You play that many games and you can't even make it even. It has to alternate who technically has home field advantage because somebody gets an extra home game every year.
It's just you have to have like a winner between the two. You can't have a winner if you're going to be even.
Well, come on, man. To quote Barry Switzer, ties might be like kissing your sister, but that's a tie that I could live with. I mean, tying 10-10 on a season series, I mean, come on, big deal.
But you have like different awards that the teams have in between them. Like the Rangers have the silver boot whenever they play the Astros.
Oh, that's one thing I should have got into as an Oklahoman is that the only saving grace of the Astros moving to the American League is that it prevents the All-Texas World Series. I never have to see that happen until, your Austin market has a team.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have for the show today.
We went a little bit over budget. We're kind of a 1-hour television episode here, closing in on 42 minutes, but I would like to say it's been a quality 42 minutes. This has been a very, very good show, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, make sure to follow us on Twitter. Again, Rivalry Red.
And please like, share, subscribe on the YouTube so we can eventually get monetized on YouTube. We're not technically monetized on Spotify yet, but I think we're hopefully going to be trying to figure that out soon. And, I mean, I know you don't like people talking the Ferengi angle. I mean, please help us get paid. But, I mean... It really does help, and I mean I know it's annoying to hear, but I'm just getting it out of my feelings now, so I don't have to talk about it every episode. I'd just be like, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for listening, and we do appreciate every single one of you. And please help spread the word about our great show here.
All right, see you next time.